people have a very hard time understanding why mathematics is important in the first place. And since I was pretty much into mathematics, I thought that was a wonderful job. And later I was attracted by Nijrode Business Universiteit that said, well, why don't you come and teach here? You know Nijrode Business Universiteit? You might even have considered it very shortly before you went into this program. It's kind of competing institute. Anyway, I moved there, and I was there, a professor in complicated methods, as we call it. And at one point in time, the dean came to me. The dean is the boss of the faculty, and he came to me and said, "Hey, we have a vacancy in operations management, and since you are teaching operations research, we thought operations management, operations research, that is more or less the same. Why don't you pick up that course?" And I thought, well, I'm in a business school, the business university, so maybe I should just pick that up, operations management. And then the world changed totally for me. Because between operations research and operations management, that seems like the same, but it's totally different. And of course, you guys know this, having kind of an engineering or quantitative background. But for me, the key difference was in operations research. If you don't put a formula on the whiteboard or on the screen, everybody's saying, "Hey, what's going on here? I don't understand what you mean here." Be more specific. As soon as in a management audience you put a formula on the whiteboard, everybody say, "Oh, wait a minute, this is too complex and too difficult and doesn't feel right." And so there's an enormous gap between those two worlds. And I find that fascinating. And still today, I find that fascinating. That in management, people have a very hard time to understand how valuable the analytics is, yet it is very important to them. But the analytical people have a very hard time understanding why the management people don't do what their models say. And so this is a very nice in-between, and since then I've been fascinated by this field. And so with one leg I'm still into the mathematics support, and in the other leg I'm in the managerial world, and I try to connect the two of them, and I find that very interesting. Now, so I was a little bit into this operations management area, and then at one point in time I thought, well, if I'm teaching management, maybe I should also have some experience in management, because it's nice to tell from the theory books, but maybe you should have some experience in this yourself also. So, and since I'm a real academician, I have only worked at universities. I've never worked really, so to speak, but I thought I should do something in management. And so I went to the dean again and say, I like to manage something here at our institute at Nijrode at the time. And he said, okay, that's fine. You can become the program director of the Master of Science in Management program at Nijrode. And before you knew it, I also had the part-time program associated with that, and that went all fine. So I also got the MBA in my portfolio, and the part-time MBA, and the executive MBA. And before you knew it, I was the associate dean of degree programs. Nobody understands what it is, but it sounds good, and I was managing all kinds of things. I was a part of the management team at Nijrode, and all kinds of issues came to me from a more managerial perspective. And just at the moment, I got a little bit bored with that, or I thought, well, I've done it for 7, 8 years now. What's next? At that time, the University of Amsterdam came to me. They say, hey, we have this all wonderful executive programs, as we call it here at the University of Amsterdam. Why don't you come over and be the director of the executive programs here? Is that a good position to be in? Okay. I thought so. So I thought that's cool. After 20 years of Nijrode, it's good to do something different. So I went here, and I became here the director of the executive programs. What are the executive programs here at University of Amsterdam at the Faculty of Economics and Business? Do we know some? Yeah, this one is part of it. So it was part of my portfolio. At that time, it didn't exist as a. There was an MBA, but not in big data. Other programs?
Healthcare management.
Healthcare management, yeah, sure.
Finance, I think.
Yeah, all kinds of finance and insurance and accountancy and controlling. There were 13 different programs, and they all had directors, and I was the director of the directors. That was a nice position to be in. So what is now Sebastian for your program? I was once the boss of, well, he was not there at the time, but that was my position. And that lasted, let's say, almost 3 years. And then I got kicked out. That had little to do with me, but more in the all kinds of restructuring that was going on at the time. And so I had to leave again, and then I went back to my alma mater, to Nijrode, and said, "Can you please take me back?" "Yes, sure, you're welcome." So, I was back there. And so when the program here at Amsterdam asked me, "Jacques, can you teach our MBA programs?" I was all too happy to come back to Amsterdam and to be, at least from that angle, still associated with your program. But that was also the time for me. Is management is okay now. I've done that. I have the experience. I know now I want to be an instructor, a professor, and not so much a manager anymore. But at least I can draw from my experiences in that way. So that's why I'm here. I was once associated here. I have even been the director of the MBA programs here at Amsterdam 6 years ago. But I'm now teaching, and so I have a lifelong experience, so to speak, in operations and supply chain, but not really from being a supply chain manager or operations manager, more from the academic field. And nowadays at Nijrode, I'm working there, and I have a sponsored chair, as they call that. So there is a company, an organization that is basically paying me to do research. That's called Evo Venedex. I have to mention them because they pay a lot of money not to me, but to the institute. Any idea what Evo Venedex is? Probably international people have never heard of that, but maybe some Dutchies have. So ready. Okay, this is an organization that is basically that has organizations as a member. They have 15,000 member, and the members are organizations, and these organizations are called shippers. Now, in the logistics field, because we are talking logistics here, in the logistics field, you have two types of companies. We have the logistics service providers, like Kuehne and Nagel and UPS and all the logistics service providers, and you have the shippers. And shippers are basically organizations that are not into logistics, but they have logistic activities. They do something so that they have to ship things. That's why they are called shippers. Let's take Tata Steel or Shell or all kinds of wholesalers. They all have logistics activities, or supermarkets, and they're all member of Evo Venedex. And basically, the Evo Venedex is trying to say to the government that you have to take care of your shippers, and it's very important that you support them, and that all the roads are free and not so much traffic jams and God knows what they're all doing. But they also say, hey, people, logistics is not so interesting anymore. We should talk supply chain. And to make the transition from logistics thinking to supply chain thinking, that's why they have connected to Nijrode, and that's why I'm on the chair. Is there any difference between logistics and supply chain?
Maybe supply
yes,
chain
there's a big difference. In a moment, I will explain what the difference is. This is not a course on logistics. It has little to do with logistics. It's on supply chain and on operations. And so that's what I like to start with. What is operations and supply chain anyway? Because I have already claimed that this is the most important part of an organization. And why is that? And why should you all know about this? Because you can live happily alive without operations and supply chain, maybe. I don't think so. But why is it part of your curriculum? Why do you need to know? That's basically what I had in mind. There's a little bit of room with some, I'm not sure where to stand here. So okay, so this is my session set up for tonight. This is what we will discuss. So the way I like to do it, I talk for, let's say, an hour and 15 minutes or so, an hour 20 minutes. Then we take a break, and then we come back, and then another hour and 15 minutes, and then we're done for the night. Does that sound right? Is that doable? Good. So this is my setup for today. I will have a rather lengthy introduction of the field. What is operations and supply chain, and why does it matter? How does it contribute? Then we go into the course setup. So I will very shortly discuss how we have organized it. What can you expect from me? What do I expect from you? How do things flow? And then we go into the real topic of today, which is operations strategy. So that's kind of the thing I like to start with. So since I'm a professor in supply chain management, I always like to start with a supply chain. And this is what we call the end-to-end supply chain. And here you see that there are multiple organizations that are basically delivering products or services to each other, and finally to the end consumer. And you also see here the term logistics flowing in here because there's all kinds of material movements. And the movement of materials is what we call logistics. So we have inbound logistics and outbound logistics and reverse logistics and all kinds of logistics flows. But that is not the important part here. The important part is how are all these organizations connected in order to bring services and products to the end consumer. And already from this very first graph, you can see the main difficulty in supply chain management. What would be the key managerial issue in supply chain management? That we can see from this graph.
How to get a product from the manufacturer to the consumer.
Yeah. You know how to get it there? What do you mean?
Well, you see a few arrows from manufacturing to the consumer, or first to wholesale and then retail.
Yeah, that's that we call multi-channel kind of issues, right? Because now we have the internet, everybody can connect immediately to the final consumer. So we have multi-channel kind of issues. Yeah, we're talking management of this chain, right? That's what we're talking. So my question is, who would do that? Who would be the manager of this supply chain? Nobody.
The person who's most affected by it, I guess, the retailer.
The retailer, yeah, might be.
I think the manufacturer.
The manufacturer?
Yeah.
Why?
Because that one connects to almost all.
They're kind of in the middle, right? So
Yeah.
they're a kind of spider in their web and connecting to everybody.
Maybe where the biggest value is.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, nice.
You said the consumer because that's where the demand is.
Consumer, where's the demand? Very good. So I already have the retailer, the manufacturer, the consumer.
I think all of them except consumer, because from supplier till retailer, they all have to manage in order to keep a stock, which they can sell it easily.
Mhm.
Consumer is just the end guy who is going to buy.
Yeah.
So supplier till retailer.
Okay, yeah, very good. Well, I meet regularly people that have on their business card supply chain manager. Right, that's my profession. I meet these people, and I always ask them, "Oh, okay, interesting. Are you managing this?" Never. They're never managing this. That's strange because this is what supply chain is. So you would say a supply chain manager is managing this. Never. Why not? Why would a supply chain manager never manage this?
They are looking for only one of them.
Right. Correct. Yeah, very good. Okay, that's a point I like to drive home here, which already be recognized. There is a supply chain manager of the supplier, of the manufacturer, of the wholesaler, of the retailer. They all have supply chain managers. And who is managing the entire supply chain? Well, actually nobody, because nobody is responsible for the entire supply chain.
But is that true? I mean, the point I was trying to make is, so for example, in South Korea, the big conglomerates, they are managing their whole supply chain. Maybe not to everybody's benefit, but they are managing because that's
There you
what
go.
they're creating most value.
And that's a very good remark. That's basically what we see is that frequently there's a dominant party. We can do the retailer or the conglomerates, like you say. They'll say, hey, I'm the biggest one, or I'm the most important one, or whatever they think, and say, let me then manage the entire supply chain. But the problem, of course, is that all the other parties say, yeah, hey, wait a minute, you are now managing me. That's not what I like to manage myself. And so that's where the conflict comes in. Already from the very first graph, you can see this going on. And this is what we will study when we talk about the supply chain management. We have the organization as a unit and the supply chain as a unit, and how are they connected? The other question, already triggered a little bit by you, is where does the supply chain start? Where does the supply chain start?
The demand comes.
Yeah, but again,
Consumer.
Okay, you might say, hey, wait a minute, we are in Europe and we read from left to right, and it starts at the supplier. So, but more and more we feel that the supply chain starts with the consumer. More and more. Why is that so?
So there is no consumer, there is no need of supply.
Yep. Okay, but I can reverse that thought. If there's no supply, the consumer can ask whatever they want.
Yeah.
So in my field, operation supply chain, it's always demand and supply. They need to be connected, just like you said. And without a demand supply doesn't make any sense, and the other way around. So they need to be there both. But still, we feel that the consumer gets more and more important, and therefore is basically the thing where it starts. How come? But this has not always been the case. I've been around long enough to remember that it was every supply created its own demand.
In its base, because now everyone tries to reduce their stock, so now it's like spotted stock, minimal stock. So whatever the consumer wants, they produce it just for that consumer itself.
Yeah, but how come? I agree
Because
totally.
everything is,
But what is the
digital.
underlying driver?
Everything is digital, and all the different parties are connected together most of the time through APIs. So you can in real time see someone is ordering something, and it can go really fast.
Indeed,
Yeah.
the visibility has increased enormously. We are all the children of our time, and you are all in this. What is it? All the data analytics and all the modern technologies. But how long are these around? How long is the smartphone around? How long? 10 years. How long is everybody connected by the internet? How long is that? 15, 20 years max. And organizations and supply chains have the tendency to be very slow in adopting all these new technologies. But the world, the last 10 years, has drastically changed. We have hyper competition. If you put your store online now, you have the whole world as your demand. All customers are all around. I used to remember the days where we had Sinterklaas we have in the Netherlands. You might have recalled that from 5 December. And I really hate shopping. I find shopping horrible. But at that time, I had to buy the presents for my family. And so what did you do? I go to the inner city and visit 5 or 6 or maybe 7 shops. And then I was totally bored. And that was my search area. Now you go to the internet and you have thousands of shops that you can select from in the same amount of time. There's hyper competition going on. And moreover, all these consumers are now talking to each other. Of course, consumers have always talked to each other, but basically on parties and things like that. But now they're talking to each other. How? Social media. How long are social media around? Same amount of time, 10 years or so. And in this last 10 to 15 years, the dominant position of the consumer has grown enormously, right? You can shop everywhere, and we really have to please him. If you have a hotel or so, and some people put on on Google bad words about you. If there are 3 of them, nobody will come to you anymore. And in the old days, that was really not true. So the consumers have gained enormous power in the supply chain. And for that reason, they should be really our central focus nowadays. Okay, so this is one of the main themes in operations and supply chain. Nobody is surprised. Customer first, customer number 1, 2, and 3, customer is king, whatever. Every organization that I know, I visit many organizations, everybody says customer is number 1, customer king, customer whatever. Are they truly doing it? Well, sometimes, but frequently not. And why not? Because they're still coming from the old age and we have not organized for the final consumer yet. Okay, so this is a big theme in my course. So customer number 1. And since we are into this, I can also tell you a little bit how to bluff your way through this course. I ask frequently a question to you, and you can always give 3 answers that are always correct. The first one is customer is king. Okay, good. What would be other answers that always are true in business?
Depends, yeah.
Cash is king.
Cash is king. Yeah, very good. So that's the number 2. Cash is king. You can always say that. Always a good answer. And the third one is
time is money.
Time is money. Yeah, okay. Also good, but not my favorite. Competitive advantage. In business, we're always looking for competitive advantage. How to distinguish ourselves from the others. So keep those in mind. Cash is king. Customer comes first, and competitive advantage, and you can really work your way here through this course. Okay, so from this very first perspective, we can already say that the supply chain should be customer focused. So we should do everything according to the customer. Now, why is that frequently hard? Well, that is because basically we are internally focused. So the manufacturer might say the wholesaler is my customer, but he's not per se focused on the final customer, etc. So before you know it, you get in kind of an internal issues, so to speak. The other thing is, yeah, what exactly is customer value? Because we want to create customer value, so what do we mean by that? If I ask that to my friends, the supply chain managers or the operations manager, and ask them, what for you is customer value? They have a very hard time coming up with an answer. What would they typically say? What's customer value for operations and supply chain? Right? Yeah, it should be on time. Yeah, very good. Good quality, very good.
Lower cost.
On time. Cost, very important. Operation supply chain is always about cost reductions, cost cutting, lower costs, lower inventories, lower costs, more efficient. Now we're talking supply chain. Yeah, dependability. Yeah, it should be dependable. These are really the values in operation, but it's a very limited view. So to understand a little bit more what value is, we have designed this customer value matrix. Okay, let me go slowly over it. It's not really the heart of what we are telling, but we have the green area and the red area, and basically customer value is the green area minus the red area. So these are the pluses and these are the minuses. And so the difference between those are what we call customer value. Now, essentially, a customer buys a product or a service and pays for that, right? And so if the value of the product or the service is higher than what you pay for it, then there is a customer value. And the larger the gap is, the more value the customer gives to that. So this is what we call the utility value. So what does the product do for you? Minus the monetary sacrifice, what do you pay for it? So that's the heart of it. But there are other factors that also come into play. It's not so much the product itself, but it's also, are we on time? Is it of the right quality? Is it dependability? That's what we call the utility values. And then the next layer is the experimental value. What do we mean by that? The experience that the customer goes through. Does it feel nice? Does it feel comfortable? Is there a nice environment? That is the experimental value that also creates value for the customer. And then we have the relational value. What does that mean? No, that might be, it's not related to other, but it is the relation. The relation that you have with the salespeople, with the organization that you buy the product from. Let me give an example from my own experience. At home, we have a car, a Toyota car. If you're in operations, then Toyota might be the car. Anyway, we have a Toyota car, and there is the dealer that sells the car to us also maintains the car. And we have a very good relation with this person. He's the boss, and always when we come, he says hello, and how are you doing, and do you need a new car, and anyway. But we really trust this guy, etc. If we are going to buy a new car, we go to him. We would really feel like fooling him to go to another option. We go there because we trust this guy and we have a good relation with him. So relational value also is value to a customer, trusting, etc. And finally, of course, we have the brand value. So there are a lot of things here on the upper half. On the lower half, we have, of course, the monetary sacrifice, but also the non-monetary sacrifice. What might that be? Time, effort, all kinds of things that you have to do that you don't like, standing in line, waiting for the product to arrive, all kinds of forms that you have to fill out, all kinds of nasty stuff. I think the reason why we buy so much on the internet nowadays has to do with the fact that it's easy. You don't have to leave your home, you don't have to go to the inner city, you don't have to park your car, you don't have to find your way, it doesn't rain. You can just do it there on your own. That is creating a lot of value for you because it helps you in your non-monetary sector. And so in operations and supply chain, we are wondering in all these aspects, in all these fields, how can we create more value? And that is not limited to the product itself. It has a lot of dimensions, basically. And that is also pre-purchase, during the purchase, and after the purchase. So we get to a whole complex area. Anyway, so customer value is a pretty large thing, and in operations, we have a specific focus. Another thing about customer value, why organizations find it frequently hard to work with that, has to do with the idea, where do we create value? In operations, we typically think we create value in our factories, in our plants, and where we make it. Let's take, for instance, a car. Simple. How do we create value in a car? Well, we're going to make a fantastic car, and it looks great, and it goes fast, and has all kinds of features in it. We produce value in the factory, correct? If we think customer, then the value is only created when the customer is using the car. So not in making the car, no value for the customer has been created yet, but the customer creates value only when he or she is using it. If you drive your children to school, if you pick up your laundry from somewhere, then you are actually using it and you create value. So that's what we call value in use. And so we have what we think value creation here, but actually value is created by the customer. And the only way in which we can influence that is, of course, where the intersection is. And the intersection is the moment of truth, the moment in which you can really understand what the customer wants and try to add additional value. Let's take this course, for instance. I prepared the course neatly. I've talked to the program managers here, and we have discussed the room and the slides and the course outline and God knows what. I have worked very hard to get the course here on the screen. But in my process, no value for you was created. And only value is created, not even now, but when you start using it. When you start actually using the concepts and the models in your real life, then we have created value. And the only moment where I can influence you, that's why I'm so passionate now, is when we are in interaction. Because then I can make you realize it's not just some other 60 slides that you can just go to, but it's actually important stuff that you might want to use for the value for yourself and your organization. So customer value is a hard thing, but very important in this course. Okay, back to supply chain. So when I talk to supply chain managers, they always say, oh, wait a minute, Jacques, we are not managing the end-to-end supply chain. I'm managing the supply chain of my organization. Okay, great. And we have to understand what is the supply chain of an organization. So we have the organization, the company in the middle, and then we have suppliers, and we have suppliers of the suppliers, and we have customers, and the customers of the customers. Before you know it, we have an end-to-end supply chain. But now we have focus on the company, and we are managing the supply chain of the organization. Sometimes at Nijrode, we ask people in the classroom, draw your organization. Make a drawing of your organization. Take a white piece of paper and draw your organization. What would you typically do if you get an assignment like that? Draw your organization. How would you do that? I think 4 out of 5 people would say, okay, I do the organizational chart. We get the CEO there, the CFO, and I'm here in this department. That's basically how people draw their own. Anyway, 4 out of 5 do it that way. There are also people who are very creative. They draw their organization as a tree, where the roots of the tree are, you know, the fundamentals, the research and development, and the fruits are, you know, the profit that we create. Anyway, people have all kinds of nice pictures. If you would ask me, draw an organization, I would do it like this. I would draw an organization as a combination of 3 flows. The flows of products and services, the primary focus, the information flow, and the monetary flow. And ideally, that is what supply chain is all about. Managing the flows within and between organizations. three types of flows, of course, the products and the services, but also the information flow and also the financial flow. Typically, we call this supply chain finance. So then we are wondering the financial flow, how can we optimally organize that? This is the more classical supply chain, and the one in the middle is maybe the most important nowadays, maybe also the most interesting to you guys. Why would this be very important nowadays, the information flow?
That's the key for other two.
Sorry?
That's the key for other two.
Yeah, not per se key part.
Being flexible.
Yeah, being flexible.
Integration.
That's where you can
Sorry?
Integration between
Yeah, interesting answers. Yeah, it's not my answer, but there are good answers.
The others
It's very
are
close to the customer.
Close to the customer value. Well, good answer. Close to the customer value. Yeah. Okay, very good, very good. So the first thing, of course, is what information should be flowing there. What are we talking here?
Data.
Yeah, all kinds of data, order data, information about what customers want, information about what's available in the market,
prices.
prices, all these things should flow, inventory positions, whatever, that should flow. My take at this is where all the innovation is coming from. The last 10 years and probably the coming 10 years, all the innovations in supply chains come from all these new data things. Blockchain, you cannot visit any conference on supply chain anymore, and then we are talking blockchain. Nobody understands what it is, but it's important. It is, and why it's important? Because it connects these organizations in a transparent way, so that we can really understand these things and not fool each other. So it opens a total new world, an Internet of Things and robotization and sensoring, and that is really driving all kinds of innovations in supply chain. And so all the things that you are actually doing and all this big data and what you guys are doing is very interesting and important for supply chain, because it is creating innovations in the information flow and thereby in the financial flow and the product flow. It has huge impact. How exactly, nobody knows yet, but it will have a huge impact, and that's why everybody is moving. Okay, again, classical is the upper one. We'll talk a lot about that. But don't forget the other ones. And ideally, they are connected. If we have a better information flow, we have a smoother flow of products and services. And hopefully, also a smoother flow of the finance. Okay, so that is basically the point. Okay, the course is called Operations and Supply Chain. So far, we have talked about supply chain. And let's move to operations. And what is operations? Well, that is basically managing the transformation process. In order to understand it a little bit, let me start here with the output. My claim is that each and every organization, even the organizations that you are working for, is producing something. Either a product or a service or a combination of them, but everybody is producing something. Each and every organization is producing something. That's my claim. Any of you don't produce anything? No, we're not making anything. Can we think of an organization that is not making anything? Government. That's the frequent answer that I get. Government. What are the guys doing? Huh? Just sitting around drinking coffee, they're not producing anything. That's actually not true at all, right? Government, they make a lot of laws and a lot of rules. They do schooling and they do roads, and they have a lot of activities actually. Whether they do that efficiently is something different, but they do produce something. They do something with that money. So let's say take Greenpeace. Greenpeace, are they producing something? Greenpeace? Peace?
Peace.
Greenpeace?
You buy a box with nothing in there from them. They kind of like use nothing. Box is sold for money.
Okay. That sounds like a very profitable business.
It's there, but it's abstract.
Yeah.
No, they literally sold a box with nothing in there. You could buy it.
Okay,
You
interesting.
know what is it to ask for your birthday.
Interesting. Fundamentally, they create awareness that we are, that we know what's going on in the world, and that we are aware that this might not be a good practice and that we should do something about it. So if you come to think of it, then each and every organization is producing something. How come? Why can't we think of any organization not doing anything?
That's the whole idea of
That would pay for an empty box.
the whole idea of an organization is to team up to do something.
The whole reason for existence of any organization is to make a product or a service. That's what we call the primary process. The transformation process is the primary process. That's the reason for existence. I started with saying this is the most important course in the entire curriculum. This is my proof. The organization was once founded to make something. And of course you want to do that in an efficient and effective way. And so, yeah, if we are distracted by all kinds of other things, we forget the fundament of the organization. Yes, marketing is very important, and finance and HRM and business analytics, etc., are all very important. But just to create products and services for the final customer, that is the whole objective. So we should go back to basics, and that's what we do in this course. More and more, especially in the Western world, we move from products to services. I think most of you are working not so much in products. Most of you are working in services, consulting services and IT services. It gets more and more service. We have software as a service, and we have Philips is doing light as a service. They don't sell light bulbs anymore. They sell uptime of the good lighting. More and more service. How come? How come we are moving from left to right here in the Western world? What's the key idea?
If you sell a product, you sell it only once.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you sell a service, you have generate a stream of income.
Okay, and so how would we name that in my favorite list?
Cash is king.
Cash is king. Actually, I was thinking of a different one. Customer value. Services create much more customer value than a product does. Okay, let me give an example here, a simple example. Let's take pizza. Pizza. Okay, let's say we have two options here. We like to eat pizza tonight, God knows why, but we want to eat pizza tonight. We have two options. We can go to the supermarket, have a deep frozen pizza, put it in the oven, heat it, and then eat it. Option one. Option number two is we call a pizza delivery, Domino's or whatever it is, and we order the pizza, they bring it to our door, and then we eat it. Two pizzas, more or less the same ingredients, kind of. What do we pay for a deep frozen pizza? How much is that?
$3.
€2. That is a
Maybe
cheap
you're
one.
beyond the deep frozen pizza already. I would say €3, just for argument's sake, €3. And what does a pizza delivery cost? Okay, let's say 9, because for calculation wise, that's 3 for the deep frozen, 9 for the home delivered. And the ingredients are more or less the same. You can say one is more fresh and looks better, whatever. But in principle, product-wise, it's more or less the same. Yes, there's a lot of effort going on in the pizza delivery because they have some scooter and they have to bring it home, etc. But in creating a deep frozen pizza, there's also a lot of effort there. You have to keep inventory, you have to wrap it and put it in boxes, and a lot of effort there. How come that the one is €9, 3 times as much, and the other one only 3? The only difference is service. And the service is paying much more than the product itself. Okay, if you don't believe that, then let's take a cup of coffee. Let's assume we make a cup of coffee at home. Just ordinary filter coffee, not espresso. Just standard. What does it cost per cup? Roughly
10 cents.
10 cents. It's so low a price that we don't even care about that, right? So we just have coffee. If you buy it in the restaurant, $2.50. Okay, that's times 25 or something like that. How come? Well, that's service, that's environment, that is basically what is created there, right? So So there's a lot of more value there. There's another reason why services are more and more important in the Western world, and that is competitive advantage. You can create much easier a competitive advantage with services than in products. Let's assume you make a camera or something like that. Can you really distinguish the camera from all the other cameras? And then people go on all these sites to compare them, and there are hundreds of them. It's very hard to find a competitive advantage there. But in services, it's much easier because it has a lot to do with the relation. So services become more and more important in the Western world because of competitive advantage, because of added value. That's why we all are moving in this direction. Anyway.
Hey, sorry.
Yeah.
Maybe a bit more depressing view, but isn't it also because there's just very few people needed to produce what we actually use, and all the rest of the people have to have something to do anyway, so provide a service.
Yeah, that's a really depressing view. I'm not sure about that. I think there's real value in the services that we create. And it makes our life all the more easier that we have all those services. Everybody has to create their own product, and we go back 300 years in time. So there is an added value, actually. Anyway, so the course doesn't matter whether it's a product or a service, I don't mind. I easily switch from products and services. You will see that most examples come from products because they are tangible and everybody can imagine what's all about, and the service is always a bit vague and intangible. But this course is really about creating both products and services, or any combination. I go to the other side of the graph, and that is resources. And here we have resources like machines and facilities, buildings, and stuff like that. And of course, human resources, people actually working there. Who is working at an organization without resources? No, you are working there, so you are a resource to the organization. Can we think of any organization without a resource? Have no buildings, no place, no people, no nothing? Maybe tonight, if you're lying in your bed, you can think of a wicked example of a company without resources, but it's so hard to imagine. So every organization has resources. Every organization is making something, hence every organization has a transformation function. Whether you call it that way or not, it's always there. And operations, you already have read that, is nothing else than how to use our resources to create these products efficiently and effectively. But that is basically what it's all about. And so the key thing I like to bring forward here is that all of you have this transformation function in your organization. And even if you're only looking at your own department, the department is producing something and has resources. So even your department has a transformation function. And the question is how to do that effectively and efficiently. And so when we talk about effectively and efficiently, we always get things like this: the right job, and do the job right, the right product at the right customer, at the right time, at the right quality, at the right cost, etc., etc. When I hear a sequence like that, I always think, yeah, right, fine. But actually, this is the fundament of what operations is all about. We are wondering what is the right products. We are doing what is the right customer. So that is not only marketing, but also at the right time. So just in time management and things like that are an integral part of what we are doing. The right quality, total quality management and everything around that is a fundamental part of what we are doing. And the right cost, of course, also. Now, I already was mentioning that in my field, operations, logistics, supply chain, everybody seems to be focused only at the bottom one. But the other ones are equally important. Create value and remove waste. So creating value is the one that's frequently forgotten. Everyone's thinking about, hey, we should cut costs here, but creating value is, I think, even more important. I always say to my fellows in logistics, say, hey, you want to lower your cost to the minimum? You want to minimize your cost? Stop your business. The cost won't be any lower than that. Yeah, they say, yeah, but then we don't have a business. Yeah, but you want lowest cost. No, any organization is there to create value. And of course, your cost should not be too high. You want to be efficient. So these always go hand in hand. And fundamentally, that's what all organizations are doing. But of course, organizations are differently. And that's why we have another input. That's basically what you are working on. And fundamentally, there are three issues here. You can work on raw materials, you can work on information, transform information, or you can work on customers themselves. So the customers go through the process. So that is what's flowing there. In order to exercise that a little bit, I have here a material information customer. So that's what we are working on. And these are the things that we can do. We can change the physical property or the information property or the perception or whatever. So these are the actions that we can do. Just to rehearse a little bit what different organizations are doing, let's try to place them in this matrix. Stable. The first one, Tata Steel. Tata Steel. The manufacturer of steel, IJmuiden, they are working in the Netherlands. Where would we put them? In which of these boxes do they fit in?
Material.
Pretty sure they do the whole chain.
Well, the primary process. Always have multiple things, but the core, the heart of what they are doing.
Physical property.
This one, right? Yeah. Material. It's typically what manufacturers are doing. They get the raw materials in, they heat it, and a chemical reaction, and God knows what they are doing. And at the end, we have steel, like magic. So they change the physical property of all the materials, and that's what they sell. So that's what manufacturing typically is doing. Okay, our Dutch pride, KLM, or former Dutch pride, I should probably say KLM, airline. Let's say passenger transportation. What are they doing?
Customer location. Storage. Customer storage.
Not so much customer
Material.
Customer location, right? You enter in Schiphol and you move to, let's say, Barcelona or wherever. So you have changed your location of customer. That's fundamentally what they are doing. Let's take a hotel then. The primary process of a hotel. Yeah, that's customer storage actually. It sounds a bit strange, but you want to spend the night somewhere. You want to have a place to spend the night. So that's, of course, their point. Interesting is the Amsterdam Business School. What are they doing? Amsterdam Business School. What is their primary process?
Information.
You might say, hey, there's a lot of research going on here at the Amsterdam Business School. So if we would place research, where would we find that? Yeah, information property, right? You get all kind of data in, you throw models at it, and you make correlations. God knows what we are doing, and then the information property has changed because now we know something from the data that we didn't know before. So that's the information property we are changing. You might also say, hey, there's a library there, so we have information storage, so that we can actually find it at the central location. But that is not all the primary process. What is the primary process of the Amsterdam Business School?
Customer and psychological state.
Well, we do something with you. You are our customers. What do? The information property. Before you walked in, you knew nothing about operations and supply chain. And when you walk out, your head is filled. That is not the primary process. That is true, of course, but not essential of what we are doing. The psychological state. We want you to become confident in your working environment, to see where the knowledge should be gained, to understand what everybody is saying, and to make a difference in the world. Ooh. Yes, that is the process that we are doing. Not just information property, but actually the psychological state. When I was a director at the program at Nijrode, the full-time Master of Science in Management, 16 months on-campus program, our marketing slogan was 16 months that will change your life. I was really proud of that. 16 months in which you learn everything about manager, well, 16 months that will change your life. So that was really the idea that we would get in the heads of people and change the psychological state. Anyway, so the idea here is that each and every organization can be placed somewhere, either you're doing something with information or with customer or to join a bit, but we're all in this transformation process. That's what we are studying. Now, the course is called Operations and Supply Chain. I explained supply chain, I explained what operations is, but there's actually a third one, and that is process management or business processes. I'm not sure, did anybody bring the textbook with them? Yeah, there's someone one lying there. What's the title?
Operations and process management.
Operations and process management. So there's a third one there, which is not named in the title, but is named in the book. It's process management. And the idea of a process management is basically that we look at processes and then we have to wonder what is a process. A process is a group of activities that creates value for a customer. Okay, there's the customer again, and there's value again. So that sounds pretty much like we have seen before. And there's a group of activities there. So different activities that together build something for the customer. That's what we call a process. And so a process combines several activities and makes that into a valuable thing for a customer. Now, the key idea here is that a supply chain is also a process. Because in the supply chain, we have different activities that together create value for a customer. So a supply chain is actually a process. We also have operations, and that is a transformation process. We have activities in which we create the products and services. And so why do we distinguish processes then? Because we, next to supply chain processes and the transformation process, we can have all kinds of other processes in organizations. And that's also what we will study. So developing a product or handling an order, from order to cash, all these things are called processes. And that's what we will also study. So we'll study the transformation process, the supply chain process, and any other process that is there around. So that is actually, so it's more process management than anything. And of course, it should be efficient and effective as well. Like we have seen for supply chains, immediately you can also see here the problem for processes. Why is process management, why is that complicated in organizations?
These are the silos.
Yeah, because of the silos, right? We are frequently organized in all kinds of departments, and departments do all the activities, and they are connected by processes. But who is managing the process? Well, like for a supply chain, frequently nobody, and then we have a lot of problems. Or there's a process manager, but then that cuts totally across all the functional silos, and we get all kinds of disturbing talks with each other. So that's fundamentally what we will talk about in this course. Okay, if we talk about processes, it is handy to have a tool for mapping processes, and then we can draw them. Then can see what's going on here. There are many tools around. Some of them are pretty advanced. I'm pretty sure that in your engineering work you have done quite advanced mapping here, but I'm going to use a very simple mapping tool. That's a process flow diagram that basically only have 3 components. We have the yellow box, these guys here. We have the red triangles, that's there, and we have the black arcs connecting them. Now, what is a yellow box here? A yellow box is an area in which we actually do something that's worthwhile, something that we are creating. We add value there. And the red triangles, that's what we call inventories or queues. So jobs arrive there, but they stand in line, they are waiting to be handled. So a red triangle is either an inventory, stuff is lying there, waiting to be processed, or waiting to be sold, waiting to move on, or there's a queue of people standing there waiting to be processed, or any other thing. What's the key difference between a red triangle and a yellow box? Yeah, no work is done. Very good.
Value creation.
Yeah, value creation. In a red triangle, no value is created. In a yellow box, the value is created. In other words, you can never skip the yellow boxes. You should always go to them. Otherwise, the product is not complete or the service is not complete. But you can easily skip the red triangles. If there's no queue there, you immediately move on. No harm done. So red triangles can be skipped, but the yellow boxes should always be part of your process. One is added value, the other one is not. Just to exercise this a little bit, let's assume we are in the wine making business. Hard to imagine. Wine, we are making wine. And our wine is particularly good. That is, after we have created the wine, we put it in these oak barrels and we let it lie there for 2 years. And why is that? Because then the wine is ripening, and after 2 years it tastes better. This 2 years in the oak barrels, is that a red triangle or a yellow box?
Yeah.
The yellow box, right? You cannot skip it. You cannot say, I just move it on. Yeah, you can do that, but then of course the value of the wine is less. Hence, it's a value-adding activity, even though you're not doing anything. You're just lying there for 2 years, right? You cannot skip it. So that's a yellow box, indeed. No added value, added value. Right, so and the black arcs are just there to see the flow. Now, we have two things. We have resources, and we have jobs and tasks. So in the process flow diagram, where would we typically find our resources? Our machines, our cars, our computers, our buildings, our people, where would they typically sit? Where would you find them?
The arrows.
Yeah, it might be an arrow just moving on, with forklift trucks or whatever. Do we find the resources with the yellow boxes? Yeah, definitely. People and machines are processing the items. Do we find them in the red triangles? Yeah, then we are stacking them and moving them around. So you will find resources all over the place. So we have resources that are sitting here at some place in this process flow diagram. And we have jobs and tasks, and those are the ones that flow through. A job comes on and says, well, this is cardboard production. We're going to make so many boxes of this and this size. That's a task, a job that needs to be performed, and that flows through. So the resources are sitting around here, and the jobs flow through the process. Just to give some examples. Patients in the hospital, then the patients are the jobs, the tasks to be performed. You have to diagnose them, and you have to treat them, and God knows what we are doing. And who are then the resources? Well, the doctors and all the medical machines that we have around in order to do all these activities. So the patients flow through, and the doctors and the rooms are all there. Today, you as a group are a task for me to be performed. Right? I'm a resource here, and so is the computer and the building here. They're all resources so that we can flow you through, so that at the end you can get your diploma and be celebrated by your friends. Well, kind of processed through the MBA program. Now, these slides are just to demonstrate that this process flow diagrams can be applied to material processors. The pizza restaurant, for one reason or another, I'm hung up on pizza in this lecture. This is basically a material processor, and here we have a dental clinic, which is a people processor, so people flow through this system. And then we have an information processor like a retail bank, in which we do a mortgage application, and so information flows through to finally we get the approval for our mortgage request. So you can see that the same things apply, the red triangles, the yellow boxes, and the black arcs. Okay, just to demonstrate a little bit on how difficult it is to manage processes, I have an example from my own experience, a problem that I've never been able to solve, that has frustrated me, have kept me awake at night, and more like that. And just from a kind of therapeutic way, I share it with you, so then I have it on my chest, and maybe you can learn something. But this is about a process that I really experienced at my time. I was working here at the University of Amsterdam, where I was the director of executive programs. And one of the issues that came to my desk was that external professors were not paid fast enough. Okay, what's an external professor? That's basically somebody that's not working at the UvA, but that's hired to teach a course, like I'm now teaching a course from outside. And so external professors, what you typically do with these people is say, hey, do you want to teach the course? Yes, I'm fine. And then you talk about what are all the requirements, and you make a so-called overeenkomst tot opdrachten. So you put everything down on paper. You also say what is the fee that people can expect. Everything is fine. Then the course is taught, the exams are there, the grades are submitted, everything is finished. And then the process starts, because at that moment the external professor files his invoice. And this process is about that it takes very, very long at that time for the process, for this invoice to be processed to payment. So the process is from submitting the invoice to payment. And that could easily take more than a half a year. And it also happened that we were asking people to teach the same course the year after. They say, I'm not going to do that. And we say, hey, why not? You had great innovations. We are very happy with you. Why don't you do it? Yeah, you have not even paid me from last year, so I'm not going to do this again. And then we are wondering, so, hey, what's going on here? And that was that the process took forever. And it was really very frustrating. And the people were actually calling me and say, if you have not solved this within a week, then I'm going to sue you. Wait a minute, we don't want to be sued, and we want you to be happy. This has nothing to do with payment terms. The payment terms are not, I think, 30 days or something. That was not the issue. It was just the process. So at that time, I thought, okay, let's practice what I teach. Let's see what the process is, right? And so after a very long debate with all kinds of people, I found out what the process was. Here it is. So here we have the external professor who has all done everything brilliantly. He's submitting his invoice and with all kinds of additional statements at that time. So we assume here that everything is okay. And that goes to the program manager. Who's that for your program? Program manager? Leslie. It goes to Leslie. Leslie is the hero in this story because he's connecting everything. So Leslie would get there and would check whether everything was according to agreements, and if so, he would go to the program director, Sebastian, I believe. We have program, and he has to sign off. If that's done, it goes back to Leslie, and it goes to the director of the Onderwijs Institute. That at the time was me, important guy, and he also had to sign off for approval. Then it went to P&O, which is the personnel, the HRM department of the faculty. And of course, they have a director, and it also needs to approve. Then it moves to the administrative center, which is a shared service center for the whole of the University of Amsterdam. So it's not faculty-based, but for everything, because the key idea is whatever payment is going outside of UvA needs to go to the administrative center. So they get it. They put it in what they call UvA data, which is a kind of SOP system in which they would enter the entire invoice. They would shoot that in a self-service tool to the program manager, who had to approve. When the approval was in, it went to Financiële en Economische Zaken, which is the finance department of the Faculty of Economics and Business. It went back for approval, and when that was all completed, then the payment was made. And that process could take more than half a year. It actually did take more than half a year frequently. Okay, when we look at this process, so why does it take so long?
Too many errors.
Too many
people involved.
Also, it could all happen before, not when you make the invoice, but also the AC should reserve the money when the external profession comes in, and then you can go.
Actually, that was all done. Everything was budgeted. That was never the issue.
But then you're already there, right? And you only need to do the last step with the invoice.
Well, so, at some point, you have to trigger this whole process, right?
Yeah, but you could do it beforehand, not with the.
True. Could have been
Different chains, different people, different systems. No mandate for the program manager.
Program manager is already committed.
Yeah. Okay. The first thing I noticed here was really odd to me. You say, hey, the program director is signing off, I'm signing off, the director is signing off, and all these checks. Why is that actually there? Idea why that was there?
It's really important.
Ego? No, could be. Frequently it is, but not in this case.
Regulation.
Regulation, yeah, that it was the rule, it was the procedure. But why is the procedure like it is?
Because they always did it like this.
Right. I totally distrust. We really trusted it only if everybody had signed it up, because then you was personally responsible for this. What was the underlying reason? I really asked her. I went around, why is the procedure? How come? Why so many people? And they said, then the story came out that once, only once, it had happened that an internal professor had filed an invoice and it was actually paid, which was a disgrace, and which, according to all kinds of legal issues, was totally disallowed. It had happened once, and it should never happen again. And therefore, we want everybody to be personally responsible for signing off on this end, because then you can really be pinpointed. Okay, what was the effect of all this? I was sitting here.
It's a big mess, and finally nobody is responsible because everyone is just signing.
Actually, when I was signing it, finally, because it took forever, it was just lying on my desk. I always found I had more important things to do. And then I really, I have to wait 20 minutes for my train still, and there's really nothing else to do. Oh, okay, let's do the invoices then. So that's the waiting. That's why it took forever. And when I was signing it, I was just signing it blind, because I thought, well, Leslie has done it, Sebastian has done it. Why should I check it again? I fully trust these people. And if everybody starts thinking that way, then there's still no check, right? So, okay, so total distrust. But that was not even the most difficult part. Why I was actually unable to solve this issue.
Whose budget?
It was my budget. I'm responsible for this part. My budget, it was all pre-budgeted, everything was okay, there was no financial strain or whatever, everything was okay. Sorry? It's not customer focused at all. No, if people have to wait for half a year, the external professor is the customer, right?
Some parts are outsourced or even services were delivered by another organization with clear SLAs and contracts.
No.
And which you could modify.
No, it really was an internal problem here. There was not so much an external
Sequential made the process was not part of it.
Who is responsible for this process? Who is running the process? Nobody. Nobody's running, because I'm responsible for this, so you can go to me and say, Jacques, hey, do your thing here, but I'm not responsible for the personnel department. I'm not responsible for the administrative center. I'm not responsible for the financial department. So from my background, I say to all these people, hey, let's all come together, let's sit together, let's discuss our process, and let's see how we jointly can make improvements here, because we are jointly in this process. What did the other people say?
No time.
We don't have a problem. You have a problem. If you have a problem, you solve your problem. Don't bother us with your problem. Just get your things. Yeah, but I say, but I'm only part of this process. I can only do my own part. No, we don't want to work with you. Would IT systems have helped here?
Yeah.
You can have a system, but if you have it organizationally, it's not in place, so you can still manage behavior.
Definitely would help. If already here we have put it in the data, and then we could have just some signals on your screen, and you go to it immediately and you just write it off. That's better than just paperwork lying around and getting lost. Actually, frequently when they were calling me and say, within a week, I want to be paid, otherwise I sue you, then the first thing I went to, where is the invoice? Where is the invoice? Because I need to do something. Of course, nobody knew, and so I was calling back. Can you please send the invoice one more time, please? And then I was just taking it with hand, and I was going to all the people, just myself. I drove there. Within a day, it was arranged. It was not the time, it was all waiting time. And that's basically what the process is all about. There's a alarming. Everybody's just doing their own thing as good as possible, but that doesn't make the process very good. Of course, the funny part is that I'm now myself an external person. So every time when I submit my invoice, I'm thinking, oh, curious to see what's happening. It goes very fast. That's probably because I'm explaining this story always in class, so that's why I bother you.
Can you just have like one step when the external professor send the invoice, like the kick in, kick out kind of a decision, is the internal or external professor? This internal professor, does it kick out? If it is external professor, only two parties maybe need to approve it and it's paid.
Yeah, true. We don't need all this extra. I can say, okay, we need a 4 eyes principle or whatever, just to make sure that we don't have any frauders. But why do we need a 12 eyes principle? There's no need for having that. But it's only done if you together agree on the entire process. So it's very easy to improve the process, but it was impossible because everybody was sitting in their own silo. And that is what frequently makes process management so difficult. If you all do that from your own silo, nothing is happening. Some way you have to coordinate this. That is basically what my area is all about. Okay, I think that's good time for a break. You take 20 minutes. Typically, I say 20 minutes, you make 25. So I say 20 minutes and then we come back, okay? So 10 minutes past 8.
Nog meer eten, nog meer eten, nog meer eten. Nee, maar je wil heel veel verschillende.
Ik like dit.
Het is allemaal heel veel.
Allemaal teams. Allemaal teams, die werken allemaal.
Ik ben hier ook met mijn keyboard.
Dit soort shit.
I didn't
Ja. Die lagen is hier.
Ja, ik heb in ieder geval een site gevonden. Zo vond dat oké, helemaal uitgewerkt. Ik moest wel even afspreken wie welke doet. Ja, allemaal precies hetzelfde verhaal.
Dit is een pauze.
Oké, zo. Midden was een ja, het mooiste dat het veel verschillende cijfers worden. Ja, dat is het steeds hoe lang. Oké, we hebben wel weer een paar cijfers. Die was echt een beetje van. Nee, studie even door. Je maakt alleen maar de voorbeelden uit. Even Nederlands. Ik heb natuurlijk Nederlands. Ja, dat is al. Dat is gewoon iemand van vorig jaar. Wat is. Ja, je moet wel, hoor. Ja. Ja, dan. Nu nog een nooit aan. Ja. Een nevenvisualization op, ik bedoel. Ja, hou me wel van. Weet je nog feedback? Ja, ik heb feedback van. Ja, heel. Consistent zo, ja, precies. En dan. Maar je kan.
Hij staat hier wel snel.
Maar dit, en dan was het nog nooit gezien op de show.
Maar vaak net als bij een lader, hij wordt achteruit verwangen voor het duwen. Ja, dat is een beetje hetzelfde.
Maar je kan gewoon rennen door. Dat was logisch door de feedback geweest. Ik zal eerlijk zijn, hij gaf alleen maar positief feedback.
Zijn er altijd van in?
Op sommige mensen van zo'n
wij denken dat ons.
Ja, moet je natuurlijk wel Excel krijgen. Zit er op Slack. Ik zet er even op. Ja, ik ga de toetsen aan. Hey guys. Guys, is your weekly reminder. Ik had wel het idee dat sommige was bij die LinkedIn strategy. Ja, in je beeld. Wat blijkbaar zo druk. Dat mensen van goede spots gaan kijken hoe. Dat begint dus onder.
En als je dan zegt, een connectortje erbij maakt, ja, die je dat wil hebben.
Van 20.000 meter.
Je moet er gewoon heen gaan. Ja, ik ben er op maar
als ik alles overgooi, 165 graden,
dat is wel wat ik begrepen. Dat het zo druk was, omdat iedereen, niet alleen mensen.
Serieus? Ja, maar mensen. Er sommige dingen hier voor 138 dagen. 138 dagen. En die worden soms ook gecanceld omdat het, we weten het niet meer. Ja, dit is wat onwerkelijk gebeurt. Ik wil net zeggen, wat cool is dit eigenlijk? Het ziet er fancy uit, maar ik snap wel, als je zo'n shit hebt, dat je hebt zo'n cool nodig. Ja, het is eentje die we gaan niet kunnen in elkaar gaan brengen. Dan ben ik ook nog eens even naar grote projecten. Ja. Hoe dikker de lijn vaak, hoe dagen, 7 dagen, 271 dagen. Je ziet echt alles gedaan. Ja.
Bij het debat moet het wel iets sneller.
Het zijn langer dan 2 seconden duurt. We hadden vorige keer hadden wij ABN AMRO.
Ja.
En die hebben dezelfde verhaal. Ik wil het verbranden. Kijk, we hebben niet over het betalingsverkeer geautomatiseerd is, maar wij graag aan dat zo ook
Goud is, dat is voor mij.
net zo gebruikt worden.
Ja,
ADN heeft het zeker weten. En de lean managers.
maar dat onderschat met die filmpje, dat was wel echt.
Moet toch wel weg, hè?
Hier minder werk, we moeten veel meer doen.
Ja. Jullie waren wel de sterren van de filmpjes.
Ja, dat was allemaal Emmer.
Ja.
Maar ik heb echt heel veel best super snel. Die video editing heb ik niks aan gedaan.
Ja.
Maar hij wilde echt op het eind wilde hij ook nog, je kent Team America of zo, die van die South Park gasten. Dan heb je dat stukje van dat die shit oplaat. Dat wilde hij aan het eind van onze presentatie. Dat zei ik kom vol op 3 minuten. Ik zei, gaan we dat gewoon niet doen. Wat maak ik?
Je was al 10 geweest. Dat gewoon
Als er 1 was geweest, ja.
Nou, 2000 meter toch?
Ja. Moet je try, man. Probeer.
Was dat alles?
Ja. Nou, het is ook niet goedkoop, hè. Dat hoort er ook bij. Het is ook niet goedkoop. Moet een beetje betalen en al. Dat is normaal te doen.
Ja. Hier heb je niet ons op, niet beter dan opdracht. Dat zijn overduidelijk van €5. Hier is beter, je hebt niet echt ook.
quality quadrant or zooming. İkinci kısımda da essay yazmam gerekiyor da daha yazılması yok. Bunu boş ver ya. Ben de öyle bir şey aslında. Hey, good. How are you? Thank you. Can you start it? I'm waiting for the last moment. Okay. not very high on my for your list. You? Yeah, because this weekend. So I'm trying to go and this one this week. Technically, finish. It asks for the quality quadrants. You can find this essay. And I remember it was around 3,000 words. It's over. 3,000 words? Yes. I haven't seen anything like that. Yeah, it's in the overall or just the essay part overall. Yeah, overall. Okay, that's an important information. Thank you. Well, I had to really look for it because somebody said it and I didn't read it as well. But then I scanned through the whole document and it's there. But it's really not clear. So just to make sure that you don't. Yeah, because I was not there. I read the maybe I haven't seen it. The course outline part. Yeah, but somewhere in the middle in the description, it's really weird. Yeah, no problem.
Job heeft een goede boek ook geschreven. Dus dit zijn supply chain.
Minstens van 12 jaar, je weet het.
Ja, ik denk het.
Dat is al.
Ik heb trouwens die Peter nog even gemaild. Of volgende week, of even op donderdag even voor het college heen.
Oké, ja. Inzage.
Ja.
Oké. Al wat teruggehoord? Of?
Nee, nog niet. Even checken of dat. Goed, volgens mij zit ook niet op zijn radar staan. Ik wil überhaupt eigenlijk persoonlijk dat ik dat zelf ontleeg. Die inzage.
Ja, hij heeft ze bij het secretariaat gelegd. Daar kun je ook in zien.
Ja, maar ik wil met hem bespreken. Dus ik heb hem gevraagd of hij het die volgende week voor college tijd heeft.
Nee, ik kan niet.
Weet je niet?
Apart.
Ja, ik vind hij moet het even uitleggen. Dus ik ga niet bij het zeggen, ja, inzien is prima, maar ik wil ook weten waarom hij bepaalde dingen zo heeft bedacht.
Ja, wat hij naar mij communiceerde was dat het kan inzien en als ik dan vragen heb dat ik daarover contact kan opnemen.
Bij deze contact heb ik gevraagd die donderdag voor college tijd, 5:30. Dus ligt het een gezamenlijke kant. Ik vind het wel raar dat hij niet een algemene inzage organiseert zoals het wel voor de studenten waarschijnlijk.
Ja, ik denk dat hij het heel goed doet.
Ja, maar ja, dat is join. Ben je er al uit zijn? Ja. Zo hier. 2 weeks.
Ja. Heb je wel uit?
Benieuwd wat de projectmanagement
Dat gaat het zijn.
Ja, wij konden niet met de bus. Wij konden niet met de bus. Nee, maar je hoeft er bijna te skippen. Ik heb de YouTube
Is hij er nog?
Ja, we hebben nog kijkers in de stream.
Hoe kan ik dat zien? 0 viewers, man.
Staat rechts onderin.
We gaan hem ook niet tekenen dat hij er was. Hij vraagt jou gewoon om dat ding aan te zetten en dan gaat hij lekker iets anders doen. Ik zet hem gewoon op Rick. Zet hem gewoon zo neer.
Ja, maar dat kan niet later nog...
Die kijkt...
Misschien wel...
Ik kijk ook liefst gewoon naar mezelf.
Man, zeg.
Nee. Maar hij zit ook altijd goed college.
Wie is er aan de andere kant?
Nou, niemand.
Oh, mooi.
Nee,
Ik
maar
het opnemen.
zet het gewoon op YouTube. Het wordt automatisch op YouTube gezet. Dus
Oh ja, precies.
Mijn eerste beelden op YouTube.
Ja?
Ja, die kleine van
Die zijn
5 die
sterk.
wil vloggen.
Ja.
Ah, dat mag ze.
Doe even zeggen wat het is.
On the spot?
Nee, dit is publiek, hè? Het wordt allemaal live.
Okay, welcome back. Let's continue. I was still at the introduction part.
Pieter, maar Pieter die is lekker iets anders aan.
A bit too slow, but doesn't matter. We'll pick up. The next issue I like to address is that obviously coming from the operations field, we think that operations is the most important thing that we can think about in an organization. It's the primary process, so it must be the source for competitive advantage. Unfortunately, many organizations are not thinking that way. Frequently, we see that organizations say, okay, operations should not bother us. Just do your thing and don't spend too much money on us, but don't keep us from our work. That we call it internally neutral. It's kind of necessary evil that we need to have, but let's get it over with. Let's focus on some other things. Obviously, I'm passionate about my field, so I feel that each operation should be externally supportive, should be a source of competitive advantage. Can we think of any organization that has fantastic operations and therefore is very successful? Amazon?
Toyota?
Most certainly. Toyota, very good. Yes. Toyota from lean perspective. Amazon is the one leading the pack in e-logistics, e-fulfillment.
IKEA.
Zara.
IKEA.
Yeah, IKEA most certainly. We'll discuss Zara later on today. IKEA also. McDonald's most certainly. Also part of the success of McDonald's is their enormous standardization and the logistics services and operations and supply chain around it. Very good. Walmart is a very good example of excellence in supply. So indeed, some of the most successful organizations in the world have thrived on their excellence in operations and supply chain. So we'll see a couple of examples during the course. So it is possible. It's not always a necessary evil. You can become very good in operations and supply chain and thereby be very successful. And in this context, I like to share a story with you which comes from Unilever. I think we're all familiar with Unilever. It's a great organization, one of our Dutch prides. And this is a story that comes from, let's say, 15 years ago, 15 years ago, that long, yeah. 15 years ago, and at that time I had the chance to meet one of the top managers of Unilever. It was kind of his retirement process, I would say, that he was going with retirement and he was much celebrated at the time. And as part of his celebration process, he was inviting all kinds of academicians to talk to him. We were allowed to interview them on how he had managed his organization. I was one of the lucky ones, so I was invited to interview him. And one of the questions I asked is, how important is operations and supply chain for your organization? And I still can remember that he drew this diagram. I was totally taken away by that. Hey, what are you now doing? He said, well, Jacques, I'm an electrical engineer by education, and I have always managed my organization, my part of Unilever, like an electric circuit. Okay, interesting. And so he was saying, well, we have three components here. We have the light bulb, we have the power, and we have the resistance. And the way I have always seen this is that the light bulb is representing the profits of the organization. And the brighter it shines, the more profit that we have. And being on the stock market, Unilever has to deliver profits each and every quarter. So for us, it's of the utmost important that we demonstrate profits. So in other words, we should let the light shine bright. So we should have a high current through this electrical circuit. Or then I was a little bit fading away. And he said, well, there are two components in electrical circuit, the power and the resistance. And the power is, the more power we have, the higher the current is, the brighter the light starts shining. And we have the resistance, and the higher the resistance is, the lower the current gets, and the less profits we will have. So we want the resistance to be as low as possible, and the power to be as high possible. And he said, I have assigned it this way, that marketing, or actually branding, is the power of my organization. I want to create a brain position at the consumer that he only wants Unilever products. So we have all these brands of Unilever, I just copied it in here. And the customer should go to the supermarket and say, I want Unilever products. And when they are not there on the shelves for one reason or other, they think, stupid shop, stupid supermarket, I go somewhere else because I want Unilever products. And branding is creating that by commercials and by all kinds of branding topics. And I said, yeah, and operations, supply chain, yeah, I said, yeah. You cannot really make a difference with that. It needs to be there on the shelf, so, but we don't spend too much time and effort in that. The resistance should be as low as possible. Okay, when I was back home, I checked out my old physics books, how it went, and okay, it's like this indeed. The higher the power and the lower the resistance, the more current we have, the higher the profit is. It was a nice break from something that I always have seen. That's a formula. I like formulas, being from a mathematics background. So the formula goes something like this: profit is revenue minus cost. Even managers can digest that. Okay. Is this true? Profit is revenue minus cost. Yep. Well, for everybody normal, that's true, unless you start talking to accountants. Accountants say, no, you don't want profit because profit can be high tax, and so you should move. And then things get really complicated. But for all practical purposes, this is okay. And so the idea is that who in the organization, which department, which specialist are busy all day with thinking of how can we create more revenue? Who are the revenue generators? The rain man in the organization. Who are doing that?
The business.
Now you have to say marketing and sales. Yes, marketing. These are the people typically doing this, right? So the commercial people in the organization are constantly wondering how to create more revenue, how to come up with new products, how to please the customer even better. And who is busy in the organization every day to lower the cost? Okay. Again, for argument's sake, we're going to say that is operations and supply chain management. And actually, in real life, this looks like true. Whenever I visit a conference on logistics, and I visit those regularly, I was once the chairman of the Dutch Logistics Society, so I meet these people. Within 3 minutes, these people start talking about lowering cost. It's kind of their bread and butter, so it's not so strange. Well, if we do this, high revenue, low cost, then of course our profits are great, and that's the way to go. And that's actually how Unilever was doing it. I really hate this approach. I think this is total baloney. I think that cannot work that way. You cannot split organizations like that. Actually, I personally believe it's the other way around. Who is actually delivering the product each day at the right customer, at the right time, at the right cost, etc.? Marketing and sales? No. This is logistics, operations, and supply chain. Make it true every day. They make sure that it is there, so they create the revenue. And who is spending way too much money on advertisements and sitting in 5-star hotels and driving BMWs? Who spend all this fortune? Well, our friends from marketing and sales. So if they should reduce their cost a little bit, then things work perfectly. Wow, this is also not entirely true. So actually, I believe that jointly we are responsible for revenue, and jointly we are responsible for cost. And you cannot easily split it that way in organizations. Yet that is how they have done it at Unilever at that time, 15 years ago. And that is an approach. If you can only spend your money once, so if you are wondering where do I spend it on better operations or on better branding, yeah, you can make choices. Okay, so that is a viable strategy, and this guy was not just thrown out as a no, he was actually celebrated as a very good manager, a very good leader. The funny part is, this was 15 years ago. Today, Unilever is amongst the organizations with the best supply chains in the world. It's actually a ranking. Rankings are totally wordless, but there are rankings in which Unilever always appears in the top 5 of the best supply chain organizations in the world. That's strange if you look at this picture. Something has drastically changed since 15 years. Nowadays, they do invest a lot of money in their supply chains. They actually consider supply chain as one of their core business parts, Unilever. What has changed? Why would it be different? But it's more than that. The CEO was already 50 years ago when he was out. What has changed? What do we think? Sorry? Yeah, not so much. They're still pretty much into products. They're pretty much in sustainable products, by the way.
There are a lot of competitors that they are not able to make revenues more, so they're trying to decrease the cost.
Yeah. No, it's not the cost that they are so much concerned about. They really want to do something else. Information is better.
They want to have the whole supply chain integration across the supply chain.
Actually, no, they don't have the whole supply chain. It's not true, because we still have very powerful supermarkets. Actually, that is what has changed over the last 15 years. 1, we have very powerful customers. 2, we have very powerful supermarkets. And that has actually changed the strategy of Unilever. Okay, let's start with the consumers. Consumers, we used to have the idea 15 years ago, we want Unilever products. If they're not there, stupid store, I go somewhere else. Nobody does that now anymore. Even if you want Unilever products and they are not there, what are you going to do? Buy an alternative. Yeah, I'm not going to shop anywhere else. I don't have the time, and it's already crazy that I went shopping. I rather do it online. We are in that mode now. It's totally different. The consumers just don't go for the Unilever. They still might like them as a priority. Okay, so what would we buy as an alternative? What is the Procter & Gamble, possibly? But frequently, home brands. And that has changed in the power of the supermarkets. Okay, if you're a little bit into the supermarkets, we know there are 3 levels of products. We have the A brand, which is Procter & Gamble and Unilever. Then we have the store brands, and then we have the C brand, which is basically Aldi kind of level, Euro Shopper or the Albert Heijn Basic. Those are really the low value. There are 3. And it used to be that the home brand was pretty close to the, let's say, things that nobody wants. But nowadays, the home brands are pretty close to the A brands. So what happens if a Unilever product is not there? We take the alternative, the home brand, which is almost equally as good, and then we think, hey, the price difference is so much. I have tried it now once. I'm going for the home brand from now on. So the supermarkets know exactly this game. So as soon as something is not in stock, they immediately move the products of themselves forward. So we are competing for shelf space. So it's not the cost that is all important to Unilever. It is their key performance measure is on-shelf availability. 1, we should have the brain position. 2, it should be on the shelves. If it's not there, we have a major problem because people will buy substitutes, and before you know it, we are out of business. And on-shelf availability can only be created if we have organized our supply chain. We cannot have out of stocks. We should have constantly should be aware of what's going on. And so from that perspective, the changing mind of the customer and the changing power in the supply chain has really moved them to integrate their supply chain. Moreover, they have thought we want to be sustainable. That should be our competitive advantage. Of course, you can only have sustainable products if you really are seeing the entire supply chain, that you know where it comes from, know what is happening with it, so that you can really also make true this sustainability. It is a strategic move, basically, because of a changing environment. Well, this is how business is working. We have a strategy, and that's very successful, and we are celebrated, and then the environment changes, and then, of course, you should adopt your strategy. And this is one example of where we see that it used to be that operation supply chain was a necessary evil, and let's not bother too much about it, and let's just lower the cost to the maximum extent, to becoming a competitive advantage. And I see more and more organizations where supply chain is becoming more and more important. It is not a necessary evil anymore. It is a source for competitive advantage. Or maybe I'm just having my own view at this, but this is basically the development that we're in. Okay, that is concluding the introduction. So we have now a little bit of the idea that actually operation supply chain is a very exciting field. I hope you feel that a little bit. You are eager now to learn more, and so we are getting into the course setup. So how have we organized the course? Well, it's all, of course, starts with the course objectives. It's all neatly written in your course outline, so I'm not going to spell that out. But just to get the gist of it, well, basically we are going to look at the operations in a general business context. So I'm not going to get in depth. There's only 7 sessions that we're having. So I'm just giving you the highlights, so to speak, so that for everybody is interesting. I will introduce some tools and techniques, some quantitative methods, just because I like them. But this is not a quantitative-oriented course. Even if you might have liked it, I think the managerial part is more important than the quantitative part. And so every now and then you see a model going by, but that's just to demonstrate underlying mechanics. And so I'm not getting into tools and techniques, although there are plenty for fields. And the most interesting part, I actually find the last bullet, is that the concepts of operations and supply chain are very simple. I can explain them in 5 minutes and everybody say, yeah, do. But applying them, actually doing it in real life, that is what makes it hard. And that's why I like to give a lot of examples, and that's why we have the mini cases, and that's why we have the groups cases, just to get the concepts into practice, and then you will see that it is frequently a struggle. Already gave the example of my own problems here at the UvA of the payment process. The idea is simple, but applying it might be very hard. And so I like to discuss that in class, and all the concepts, and you can read it in the book. Okay, how have we organized it? Well, there are 7 sessions together, of which 5 are of this nature, where we have a kind of interactive lecture. We have 1 simulation in which we do a game, the famous or notorious beer distribution game. And then in the final session, we'll have a review of the course and discuss a test exam, which you get a little bit of idea what type of questions I ask on the exam. That also gives us the idea that we can wrap up the course. Then we have the 2 group cases. Are you already assigned in groups? Should I do that, or how does that work? You will do that. Okay, good.
How big must the groups be?
Payments go to him. Okay, so groups of, let's say, 5 students, ideally. In which you do the cases, then we have a final exam. Very important to mention already now that it is an open book exam. That means you can take the book, you can take all your notes, you can take other books, you can take whatever it is that you like to the final exam. Absolutely no use to you, but at least you don't have to memorize things or learn by heart, or you have all the formulas when applicable immediately available. So it's an open book exam. So more about that later. Of course, we have the textbook. The textbook is for your own reading, and I'm not going to say much about that in class. You take your own pace. You don't really have to read it cover to cover. It's more about the key concepts, background reading. Take your own time with that. We'll have some exercise sets as of next week, in which the more quantitative parts can be exercised. And there are all kinds of other materials that I will post on Blackboard and have already posted there, including the mini cases. So the mini case already, Zara will discuss later today. You're expected to read that. It's all bedtime reading. I frequently just use. You don't have to analyze just a newspaper article to get a little bit the underlying concepts. So that's basically it's in terms of organization. The assignment of the grade distribution is all. So there are other questions about this.
Open book exams are always a bit.
Yeah, it seems like a gift from me to you, but actually it makes things more complex. Yeah. But I don't believe in memorizing things and stuff like that. This is an MBA, so you have all the materials available. The exam will be really not the theoretical part. You get little cases, and then you are supposed to find the right concepts and apply it. So be applied exam. Okay, if you do have questions, please write me an email. I have a kind of 24-hour reply policy. If you send me an email within 24 hours, I'm supposed to reply to you. If that doesn't work, you immediately have to say, hey, wait a minute, 24 hours, come on. And then probably I must have missed something. But really, the idea is whatever question you have on the contents, on the process, or whatever, please ask, because your time is limited, and I want to make things as easy as possible, not in terms of exam, but in terms of the process going to the exam. The questions for the cases will be on the portal later, on Blackboard later. I will explain exactly. But fundamentally, a case report is you have 5 or 6 questions. You say answer 1, answer 2, until 6, and then you submit the report. So as simple as that. Okay, more about this later. Let's move on to the first topic within operations, and that is operations strategy. You already had a whole course on strategy, so not much to add to that maybe, but I'm going to focus it on the operations field. And of course, that's typically what's happening in business school. We have corporate strategy, and then we have marketing strategy, and finance strategy, and HRM strategy, and operation strategy. So that's what I'm now going to do. Now, the first things, I'll just go over them quickly. It's just a recap of what the essence of strategy is, at least to the extent that I understand. So it's where do we compete? So in which product market combinations are we in? What is the unique value? What is our competitive advantage? Which customers do we like to serve? And how do we sustain that? So I'll go over that quickly. And of course, we have a mission and a vision and stuff like that. I'm not going into that at all. Let's move on immediately to the more important part, and that is operation strategy. So here the idea is that we have a corporation, and the corporation can have multiple business units, and a business unit has multiple functions. And if you don't have a corporation, then that all collapses. Then we just have a business with several units. And the idea is that we're going to look at the operation strategy. And of course, how that contributes to the business strategy, and how that is aligned to the finance strategy and to the marketing strategy. So we're going to focus on this part, and how that interacts with all the other parts. So we're going to look at operation strategy. It's a functional strategy. Now, in any strategy, we need focus, differentiation, alignment, and priorities. But let me just take some examples here to discuss it a little bit. The first example is, let's assume that we are in an organization and sales in all their advertising and their branding and whatever they are doing, they're emphasizing the freshness of their products. We are number one in fresh. For fresh, come to us. Fresh is for us the key performance measure. And operations at the same time tries to cut costs by maximizing utilization. What's that? Utilization? Utilization, what is that?
Use of the resources.
Yeah, use of the resources. So when we have resources available, they should be used to the maximum extent. So the machine should be work, they should be fully utilized. And so basically we do that frequently because the cost of the resource is there, so you better use it. Otherwise it's just a waste of our money. So we cut costs by maximizing utilization. So we have this organization in which sales says fresh, and operations says cut cost cutting. Is that okay? If I ask questions like that, it's not okay. Something is wrong here.
They need to be.
So why would that not be okay?
Sales is doing it.
Yeah, so it might harm quality, but why is that a problem? Yeah, it's always a problem, but why in this particular case?
You create waste.
Yeah.
If the core value is freshness, then it might not necessarily align with inflation.
Yeah, right. So it's a misalignment, right? So both are okay. Fresh is okay, and nothing. Cutting costs also okay. Nothing wrong with that, but it doesn't go well together. The easiest way to understand is, what does fresh mean? From operations perspective, fresh means that there's a limited time between production and consumption. So we have produced it and consumed it, and there's a limited time there because then only it's fresh. Is there a long time there? That's not fresh anymore, right? So if you really want to be fresh, you should follow the demand very closely. So high demand, we produce a lot. Low demand, we don't produce too much. If you are maximizing utilization, you don't look at demand at all. You just say, I have resources and I'm going to use them. Whether there is demand or not, there will be future demand. And I'm just going to produce. Fine, no problem, but that's not going to be fresh. It's a little like the bartender who was there at 7 o'clock in the bar and thinking, hey, no people there yet, but I want to maximize my utilization, so I'm going to make the beers. And if people come in at 10, then they're already ready. Yeah, but it's not really fresh anymore, right? It's maximizing utilization. So there's a disconnect here. It's not aligned. And in strategy, obviously, we should be aligned. Everybody should move in the same direction. So this is a misalignment. Okay, next item. Let's assume your strategy is to be an innovative company. You want to be innovative with respect to new products. You always want to bring the newest products to the market. That is your aim. And then the question is, should you use dedicated equipment like highly automated assembly line? You know, the assembly lines for cars are highly automated with robots and all that. Should you put your money in that? Or should you have a highly skilled and flexible workforce? Okay, I can only spend my money once. I have to choose. That's what strategy is about. So am I going to use for the highly automated assembly line, which is nice with nice robots and fantastic, or should I have very flexible workforce, which is also nice? Which one to choose for? Obviously the second, right? Why is the well, the highly automated assembly line works very hard, good for high volume situations, and we used to produce the same every day, then that is stopped. If the market is changing all the time, that is no good for you. So this is a priority issue. You have to choose a strategy. So if this is what you aim, innovation, then you should invest your money in highly flexible people. Okay, so these are some key issues that go to this. So an operations strategy, that's also why I start with that. An operations strategy is determining all your decisions in operations function. Here are some key decisions. So which competencies to have, which resources to have, and which processes to have. So only once I know my strategy, then I can decide all these things. If my strategy is not clear, then yeah, I'm not really sure what to choose. So strategy is a matter of choosing, and only once you know your strategy, you can make the relevant choices. So that's the way we will proceed. So today I'll talk about operation strategy. The next time that we meet, which is next week, we'll talk about the strategic decisions in operations, which we call design. So how should our supply chain look like? Which type of production do we want? Which types of processes do we need? What type of facilities do we need? What type of layout? Which are the long-term decisions, strategic decisions, so to speak, design issues. And once I've determined the strategy and the design, then I need to use my resources to the best possible way, which we call planning and control. So these are the three basic areas in any operations supply chain. First strategy, then design. You design your entire supply chain, you design your processes, you design your facilities, and then you start using them in an optimal way, which is planning and control. Okay, so this is today, next week, and the week after that. That's the sequence that we are in. Okay, let's go to the heart of strategy, operations strategy. And in the heart of strategy, we look at 5 so-called key performance measures. 5 key performance measures. Cost, quality, speed, dependability, and flexibility. And the claim that I have here, in whatever operations you're working, in services or in manufacturing, in whatever branch you're working in operations, these 5 are always important. And actually, that's it. Well, not entirely, but okay. So always cost is important. We want to have the lowest cost. Always quality is important. We want to have the best quality. Always speed is important. We want to go as fast as we can. Not like the process I was discussing on the invoice that took way too long, was not fast at all. We want to be dependable, on time, reliable, that is, and we want to be flexible. We want to be able to adapt to changing circumstances, especially customization. Different customers want different things, and we should be able to adapt to the customer needs. And my claim is that whatever operations you're in, always strive to play a role. Always you want to have top cost, lowest cost, top quality, very fast, very reliable and dependable, and being very flexible. Anything missing from the list? Let's assume we are in operations. What should always also be important next to these 5? Responsibility.
Strategy.
Yeah, in terms of? Sorry?
Failures.
Yeah, that is more internal. Who is responsible for doing that? But this is more on the performance of us.
It's first time right.
First time right is dependability. On time, in full, first time right. Or sometimes part of quality, depends a little bit on how you have defined it. Is there in the list?
Customer satisfaction?
Customer satisfaction, why is that not there?
Well, you can have great quality, but maybe no.
Well, the satisfaction depends on the quality, right?
Yeah, but not only, but also how quickly it's delivered. I guess that's a combination. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the whole idea. So you might ask, why are these 5 so important to us? That is the operations way to look at customer value. Of course, there are additional things to customer value. I've explained that before, but in operations, this is how we have translated customer value. So altogether, this is building customer satisfaction. Low cost, fast delivery, reliable delivery, good quality, flexible to customer needs. That is the way we have translated in operations customer value. So customer satisfaction is the combination of these things, like you already are saying. Still, we can argue that some things are missing on the list. Sustainability, very good. Yeah, I'm really tempted to add sustainability to the list. That's really something of the last 5 to 10 years, maybe. It's not classical in the list, but many organizations are putting sustainability additionally on the list and report on that separately. It depends a bit on the organization, but at this time and age, I would really argue put sustainability as a number 6. Other things that I sometimes hear is employee satisfaction. Employee satisfaction. Why would you find that important? Employee satisfaction? Who cares?
It's part of sustainability, right?
Yeah, might be
but
part of
also
sustainability.
affects the other things, right? If the employees are happy, they deliver better.
We consider that as an input parameter. These are output parameters. So the key idea is if people are happy, then frequently they provide a better service, better quality, they work harder, that creates better outputs. I would recommend to everybody to have customer satisfaction measured in the organization and to actively manage that, because there's a strong connection to performance. But it's an input rather than an output. That's why we don't have it. Another one that I frequently do see is safety. Health, safety, and environment, sometimes called. For which type of organization would that be really important? Safety?
Industrial.
Yeah, construction, manufacturing. My wife has worked with Shell for a long time. There, the health, safety, and environment was really huge. She was actually working in an office and sitting behind the computer all day. But if you walked to the cafeteria, then you have to walk the stairs. You have to hold the rail. If you don't, you get a yellow card. If you see somebody else walking the stairs without holding the rail, you should give a yellow card. They're really hung up on this safety issue. That's part of their operations performance, so to speak. Okay, so in the remainder of this course, I will just take the 5. You can add to the list whatever you find important in your organization. But the key is that we have this as our primary focus in operations and supply chain, that we should work on all these. These are the 5 key performance measures for that. And of course, we frequently translated that into KPIs, critical performance indicators. Here you see some of the frequently used that, but I'm going to take that on a more global scale here. So you might wonder, why are these 5 important? Well, one thing we already determined, these 5 are important because our customers care about that. Our customers want low cost or at least low price. Our customers want it to be delivered fast. They want to deliver it of high quality, and they want to be delivered according to their own needs. So we do this because that's a customer value. There's another one, and that's frequently a bit hidden, is that if you excel in one of these, then it might have a positive impact on the others. For instance, if you excel in quality, if you're very good at quality, then your cost goes down. Wait a minute.
It's the other way around, right?
Wait a minute. If you excel in quality, then your costs go down. Now, if you excel in quality, then your customers go up, right? But there's still a other connection also. Why would it be? When would it be that if you are very good at quality, that your cost actually would go down?
Because you have fewer failures.
Economies of scale, but that's not so much related to quality.
Customer churn.
Sorry?
Less customer churn.
Yeah, less customer churn.
Less errors.
Yeah, less errors, less firefighting, less troubles, less first time right. No scrap, all these things. Actually, when I was doing my management task at Nijrode, for a week I was making notes on my management time, let's say 100% management time, how much I was spending on creating new value and making new things and things better, and how much time I was spending on firefighting, solving problems that should never have occurred. Any idea what the distribution was? 100% time, how much on firefighting?
80.
98. You underestimate my. I was actually in that week 60%. I was actually busy on solving all kinds of issues that should never have happened.
And if you go to management time and you see what the managers are frequently busy with, it's frequently firefighting. And if we don't have that, of course, that's saving a lot of time for managers, and managers are the most expensive ones around, right? So that really saves you a lot of time. Anyway, that's the underlying idea. If you excel in quality, then that at least partially has a positive effect on the other hand. So there are many more of these connections. If you're very dependable, then your speed also goes up. And there are all kinds of connections. But that's not the most important thing, frequently hidden. The most important thing is these 5 do matter because that's our way to define customer value. Okay, all very nice, but how is this related to strategy? I'm just claiming that there are 5 key performance measures here. Well, it's related to strategy in a way that operations strategy in its very fundament is a choice between which of these 5 is most important to you. I put it here in a golden box for you to never forget again. Define a priority on the 5 key performance measures. Now, all 5 are always important. Cost is important, and speed is important, and dependability, all are important. But the strategy is fine, but which one is more important to you? If you have to choose with a pistol on your chest to choose cost or quality, which one are you going to take? And yeah, that is what strategy is all about. Strategy is a matter of choosing. And so I define operation strategy in a very simple way. It's a sequence of the 5 key performance measures. On number 1, the most important, number 2, the second most important, and the bottom one still important, but choices have to be made, so I go for that one. Okay, we're going to see a couple of examples in a moment, but that's almost too simple, therefore I've complicated matters here a little bit in this graph. What's the underlying idea? I have 2 of the 5 I've put here. One is cost, and the other one is quality. Actually, I should have put them, all 5 of them here, and then we have a 5-dimensional. I'm pretty sure that you techies can all do that, but I'm already 2 is more than enough complex for me. So I have cost here and quality here. The lower the cost, the better. The higher quality, the better. So the more we are up here, the better it is. Unfortunately, everybody knows that you cannot lower your cost and lower and lower and lower and increase your quality and quality up to infinity. There is some borderline there. If you have done everything first time right, if you still want to improve your quality, then obviously your cost will go up. And so there is some borderline here, some threshold or whatever we call it here, a frontier, and that's the limit. We cannot go any further. With the current knowledge and the current information system and whatever that we have, that's the best we can do, the green line. This is what we call the operational efficiency frontier. And so if you are below that, then it's still possible to move out. So if you're here in the red area, it means that you can have a better quality and a lower cost at the same time. And this is the area in which we say we can do more with less. We can have a better quality at a lower cost. That's when you are in the red area. So whenever a manager comes in and say, people, we have to do more with less, typical management talk, then he basically says we are not on the green line. We are in the red area. And the typical reaction of people on the work floor say, yeah, that's very nice, but that means that you can only have one. You can have higher cost, better quality, or lower cost, lower quality. You have to choose. That's only true on the boundary.
So how do you know if you're on the boundary or not?
Good question. This is a very conceptual model, right? So I'll come to that back in a second. If I don't, you have to because I've said that frequently, and then people afterwards say, yeah, but you never answered my question. That's not my intention. I just want to have a clear sequence here. Okay, so there are 3 things actually in this conceptual model. 1, never be in the red. Whatever operations you're in, you always should be on the green line. That's hard work, and that is really being a professional. Strategy is what you are doing if you're on the green line. And then you have to determine, am I here, am I there, am I there? So strategy is where on the green line do I want to be? 1 is always be on the green line. 2 is where on the green line, and that is what strategy is about. There's a third thing here, that's what we call innovation, coming up with new ideas, with breakthrough concepts, with new technologies, whatever, where you can actually shift the boundary. If that's the case, then again, you can have everything. And so these three things are always working in parallel. Strategy is where on the green line? Okay, back to your question. How could we know this in real life? What would be a way in order to move from a conceptual model to actually a usable model? Measure. Measure, good idea. But how would you measure? Okay, so we have to define first what is cost, etc. So how could we find the green line actually?
Benchmark.
Benchmarking. Yeah, benchmarking is the way to determine this. So you take all kinds of measurements and you compare all kinds of industries, and whoever is lying furthest out there, that is the boundary. That is what is possible. How many of you are actually doing this? You may raise hand now. Yeah, you are actually.
Well, as a manager, so we have to beat the benchmark.
Yeah. You have to beat
the
the
easy to measure.
Yeah.
Not always happens.
But okay, I'm trying to connect to the big data and stuff. What you're in. This is one of the areas in which we can really use data in order to see where we are and see where we are actually doing that. What is a benchmarking is basically comparing and seeing who is best in class and learn from that. The whole idea about that. Of course, you need to have a lot of data and neatly defined. Anyway,
yeah, but you can't always compare different companies with each other, even if they're doing the same thing, because processes are different, there's different people, different skills. There's just
no, we are not. Look, we only look. We don't have to compare companies. We're only looking for the boundary. And we don't want any organizations that are better at us in everything, because then we can learn. But if you are here and another company is there, fine, no problem at all, right? Because they have a different strategy. If you take, for instance, the Emirates versus Ryanair, typical example, where would we find Emirates versus Ryanair? Let's assume they are both on the green line, which is not so far from the truth, I think. Ryanair somewhere here, Emirates there. And that coexist. Yeah, they have a totally different strategy. They have totally different processes. Everything is different there. They are both on the green line, but some people really I would say Emirates. Come on, I'm just flying there for a very low rate. I'm on the same airport, so I go for Ryanair. And others say I don't want to be a Ryanair, not even when I'm dead. When I fly, I want to be treated like a human being. It's totally different processes, different background, everything different. But from a strategy perspective, fine. Okay, so it's not on the green line, one is good or not, it's just a matter of choosing. So operation strategy, this is the key message. Remember anything today, remember operation strategy is a matter of the 5 key performance measures in which sequence and how are they traded off against each other. That's basically what we are doing.
So the cost is that the cost for the product or the cost for the
Sorry, I don't get
like the cost.
Yeah.
Is that the cost, what operations cost?
Yeah, operation cost.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in a lot of benchmarks, you always see the price for the consumer price is that because that's the only data.
Good point. Good point. Yeah. Price is not cost. You understand that? I'm not saying. Everybody understands that, but at operation, it's very important. In operation, we look at cost, never at price. Price is something else, and of course, price is immediately available, and cost is hard to determine. We all know. That's why we frequently say, okay, let's look at the price. But that's actually not let's say, from an operation perspective, it's very easy to lower the price. It's very hard to lower the cost. If you lower your cost, it's really a capability to be able to deliver something against low cost. That's a capability, something that you have to develop. To deliver something against a low price, I can do that every day. I just lower the price. No, that's not a capability. Yeah, so we look at the cost, not at price. Yeah.
Is it also the manufacturing view of the operation strategy? Because things would probably work very different in, let's say, consulting.
Why is that?
The whole cost and the quality aspects of it, because most of the time, higher the quality, higher will be the cost. So for example, look at the cost perspective, because the salaried employee, while it's your asset, but at the same time, it's the cost as well in consulting. While it's very different in the manufacturing, where you're producing something, and then you have to optimize the manufacturing part of it in the whole process.
Yeah, actually, I totally disagree. Yeah. So the concept of cost and quality are valid for consulting as well, but they are traded off in a different way, most certainly. And that's a matter of strategy. Yeah, there's much more added value in a consultancy than there is in manufacturing. So the manufacturing, the cost is probably much more important compared to the quality. So, but from a strategic point of view, from an abstract point of view, there is really no difference.
Does the efficient flow chain shifts equally to the right when you apply innovation?
Oh no, I've drawn it very neatly here. What exactly the shape is, whether it's flat or whether it's concave or convex or whatever. We actually,
for example, costs could be the same, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we can have increasing economies of scale or decreasing economies of scale. So the shape of the graph looks nice this way. Okay. So these 3 steps are already explained, and the same thing is here one more time. But here I've drawn it on 5 dimensions. Then we can have a polar diagram. The further out, the more important it is. So it's all the same. Now again, what is the underlying basic idea here is, first you should have your strategy. It should be clear. Then only you can make all your decisions in operations. Just to give one example. One of the decisions is, should we have decentralized operations or centralized operations? Let's say manufacturing is easiest. Should we have one plant in the center of Europe distributing to all countries, or should we have a plant in each and every country of Europe? That's a decision in operations, design decision. One plant centralized or decentralized. Okay, in terms of operations, what is good about centralized? Why would we centralize things? Low cost, economies of scale. Why would we decentralize things? Yeah, now we are getting, now I'm training you, right? So we have to think the 5 key performance measures. Okay, decentralized, what's good about decentralized? Speed?
Speed.
Yeah, speed, because you're closer to the market. You can easily deliver. What more? Yeah, flexibility. You can really say, okay, in this market, I'm making this product for that local market, and that local market, I'm doing this. So you can adopt your flexibility. And you can say dependability. So cost is a driver for centralization, and speed and flexibility is a driver for decentralization. If your priority is to have lowest possible cost, you would typically centralize. If your priority is to be very flexible, you would typically decentralize.